Richard, we know one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on is we've got a lot of listeners that are, well, own real estate, but also invest in real estate. And one thing that you're focusing on a lot these days is estate planning. Can you maybe, first of all, just give us an intro to like what exactly is estate planning and how does it relate for people who own real estate in BC?
Yeah, so in terms of estate planning, you're looking at a couple of different scenarios. One is what happens when you're unable to act and give instructions to your financial advisors, your realtors, etc. And so you've got what's referred to as a power of attorney, where you appoint someone who could make legal and financial decisions for you. And quite frankly, it's whether you're competent or incompetent. Most powers of attorney nowadays apply equal on both those scenarios, whether you're competent or incompetent, because, you may simply be away, may be physically disabled, but yet competent. So power of attorney, you're alive, you want someone who potentially can assist with legal and financial matters. The other document that you use while you're alive is called a representation agreement, which deals with health care. What the government recognized was the skill set of someone to be able to help manage financial and legal matters may be very different from someone who's going to be dealing with health care issues and giving final instructions for medical care. In terms of the actual estate planning, normally what you're working with there is creating a will. And there's a number of structures around estate planning which look at, what's the family structure? Are there a way to reduce taxes? Is there a way to avoid probate fees? Probate is the process of actually getting a court order formally appointing the executor of the will so that they've got legal authority to go to the bank and get things changed, deal with the land title office, etc. But yeah, and it varies on the family. Is it a young couple? Is it an older couple with children and grandchildren? So lots of different factors come into play. But it is really important that people are looking at getting those documents done.
And Richard, you mentioned probate, you mentioned power of attorney. A lot of people are going to, I guess rightly or wrongly, assume that this is something that you should be thinking about in your 60s and 70s, or when you're getting closer to an age where there's a potential death in the family. Is that accurate to think about estate planning? Like when should someone start thinking about estate planning, I guess?
When people normally start thinking about it is when they have a child. That's when they start to think about it. And we're often helping them buy their first home, which is normally a condo at that stage. And they say, yes, we need to get that done. Well, when they come back to see me to buy the next place because they've had a second child, that's actually when they get it done. But it is important. I'll give you an example of what can possibly go wrong. So I had a young couple. They had young children. Financially, they had done very well for themselves. He was diagnosed with a fairly aggressive form of cancer. And he wanted to get everything organized. And his wife basically said, you know what, we're going to beat this battle. So there's no panic on this. And unfortunately, he did not beat the battle. And then the wife discovered that without a will, the government provincial legislation will determine the distribution. And what that distribution does is not give everything to the spouse, which is what she assumed would be the case. But in fact, a portion of it has to be held in trust for the deceased children as well. And now the wife is now dealing with the public guardian and trustee to make sure that she's managing those minor children's interests in the estate appropriately. So a real challenge. And, what's interesting about estate planning, it starts when someone is, particularly when they've got young kids, but right through till they're in their 90s. And there's different factors at play depending on where you sit in the age and what is your relationship, married, unmarried, divorced, etc. So it really is important that you're getting this taken care of. You're talking to someone who in fact practices in that area day in and day night all the time.
Just to kind of double down on that a little bit, Richard. So I think her assumption is probably what everybody listening would assume, right? That as a guardian of the children, she would get the control over all the assets of her and her husband. Is that fairly common? So without a will, it has to pass through that process, and And the province always gets involved, or was that a
Yes.
unique case?
No, so when there's no will, the government legislation sets out what the distribution will be. Okay. And so if there's no children, then the spouse inherits. If there's children, then a portion of it's held for the children. And if there's no children and there's no spouse, then are the parents alive? And if there's no, so it just sort of
Right.
tracks through each different scenario. And there's some of those scenarios where it's certainly not what you want to have happen. Another great example is someone passes away and they've got a child with disabilities and getting government benefits. So under the government regime, that child could be inheriting, and there is the potential for that child to lose government benefits depending on how much and what type of assets they're inheriting. So again, it's really why it's so critical. And I guess one of the things in talking with my clients, I have this expression, bad things happen to somebody. And hopefully it's none of us. But, we had about a year and a half, 2 years ago, the unfortunate story on the North Shore where young fellow's walking his neighbor's dog. The dog jumps into the Capilano River. The fellow jumps in to rescue it. The dog comes out and son drowns. The neighbor drowns. Wife reaches out to me, and again, unfortunately, they hadn't done any estate planning work. And so, again, just created tremendous additional stress for the spouse. So it really is important. There's very few scenarios where someone should just ignore the whole issue because bad things happen to somebody.
Sorry, I just have one more question, Richard. What does it look like? Somebody and their partner decide they want to get started. Do they sit down with you and you kind of ask a series of questions to them in order to kind of figure out the best structure for the will? Or what does the process look like to make sure that you're kind of squared away and protected?
Yeah, so what we do is we have the clients complete some basic information, their full names, do they have kids, who are they thinking of giving to? And then we meet with them either in person or through technology like this and just walk through. And, it doesn't take very long for professionals that practice in this area to start sort of mapping out a strategy. And the strategy is quite different depending on how old the clients are, do they have children, etc. So as our clients, for our older clients, we're often looking at solutions that could streamline the distribution of their estate. And we have a number of structures which we use to avoid probate, which is a rather lengthy process, and you pay the government 1.4% of the value of the estate. So once we know the fact pattern, we can quickly start to identify what are the key variables that must be introduced into their estate plan.